everyone, welcome. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm Diana Martin. I'm the Executive Director here at Hourglass, and I'd like to welcome you to our first Friday Forum today with the Lancaster County Commissioners. Today we're joined by Commissioners Josh Parsons, Ray D'Agostino, and John Trescot. I'd like to thank each of you for taking time out of your very busy schedules to be with us today. Today's forum will kick off with a few questions that were developed by Hourglass. Those questions were shared with the commissioners in advance and span topics ranging from the new county jail to Lancaster's American Rescue Act plan funds. After that portion of the forum, we'll have time for some questions from the audience, so I hope that you're all brainstorming some topics that you'd like to be part of the conversation today. And for those of you who are watching us virtually on the live stream, if you have questions, you can just drop those into the chat and we'll be monitoring them. So thank you all so much for being here. I'd also like to thank our First Friday Forum sponsor, Rogers & Associates. I know we have a few people here from Rogers & Associates, so yeah, thank you so much for making these forums possible. And I'd also like to thank Millersville University and the Ware Center for hosting us in this beautiful space. I think we got the nice slice of sunlight today is right during our event. So without any further ado, I think we'll just get started with the questions. The first question I have, I'd like to invite each of the commissioners to respond to. And since we're kicking off a new year, we felt like it's a nice time to start with some reflections. I'd like to give a chance for each commissioner to respond about your proudest accomplishment in 2022, and also as we transition into a new year, what keeps you up at night. So you have to duke this out. Who's going to start?
I guess I'll start. First, I want to say thank you to Hourglass for the opportunity to be here today, and Happy New Year to everyone. Appreciate always the opportunity to be in front of the public and be able to, have good dialogue. So, the first question is, what we're proudest of. And I promise, I couldn't just pick one. I have five, the top five, and I have one item I can talk.
Leave anything for us.
So here's the thing. It literally will take 1 minute. I don't know how many grains of the hourglass that is, but it'll take 1 minute. All right. No particular order. I would say that the establishment of the county's first capital improvement policy plan and fund was a key accomplishment. Second, progress on the new correctional facility, being the purchase of land, hiring an owner's rep, and the needs assessment, which was just completed. I would say ARPA community guidelines, which we approved and have been putting into practice over the last year. Balanced budget, no tax increase, keeping reducing debt, and having a good solid pension plan, and then improvements to community services and leadership are my top five. Then what keeps me up at night, and I don't think this is going to be necessarily unique to me, but what keeps me really concerned is inflation, including workforce challenges, and all the ways that it is negatively impacting our community, be it individuals, families, businesses, nonprofits, and government. So that's what kind of keeps me up at night. Thank you.
Thanks, Ray.
Well, I'll just add my thanks for having us. Once again, we always enjoy being here, and thanks to Rick Rogers and team for sponsoring this event. And we just appreciate having the chance to have a dialogue with you. And we did ask for less questions this year so that we can have more chance to get your questions, because we always enjoy that piece as well. I'm like Ray, you ask this every year, and there's never just one. So I will say that, we're moving, I believe we're moving the agenda that we were elected to move, and we're just proud and happy and excited about where Lancaster County is. I think Lancaster County, we were just, some of us, talking about all the top 10 lists that Lancaster County has made, and I think that is a result of the teamwork of our county, and I think there's teamwork in county government too, and we are a level of government that works. And what demonstrates that? Well, the results, whether that's 10 years of good balanced budgets without raising taxes, whether that's paying down around $100 million of debt, whether that's having more money in the bank than we've had as far back as we can go in financial statements, whether that is taking care of our infrastructure. We're on track to repair or replace all county-owned bridges by the end of this year, whether that's being the leading county in the nation for ag preservation. We could go on and on of things like that. All of those are accomplished through a team effort. At least since I've been on the board, we've had a great collaborative relationship with all three of us. We certainly have disagreements from time to time. Sometimes they're strong disagreements, but I'm glad to say that that has continued with our newest colleague, John. Sometimes he says Lancaster wrong, he pronounces it wrong. Sometimes he says bad things about us in the press, which we sometimes deserve, but he has been a collaborative partner and is very interested in solving problems as we are. So we just appreciate all that. What keeps me up at night? Not much. I used to say I have twins who, when they were first born a few years ago, I would say they keep me up at night. They're 5 now, so they really don't. I think there is a general concern about preserving what we have here in Lancaster County. I know Hourglass is concerned about that, and we are too, not losing the character of what we have in Lancaster County. And we are working on that in a number of different ways, which we can talk about later. So I'll turn it over to John.
Thanks, Justin. This was a new venture for me into politics for a short time. I've enjoyed it working for things. I'll go with Josh's statements that there have been good cooperation and some disagreements, but I look forward to doing it the rest of this year. I'll just list maybe one thing. I was very pleased working with the county organization in terms of addressing a high turnover rate we have and looking at how to restructure our HR organization, how we're doing payroll and salaries. But that's a question that comes later, but I'm going to list it right now that I think I worked a lot of hours on that, as did the HR department, so I'm very pleased with that. I think it sets us up better to help reduce turnover in the future. In terms of keeping me up at night, okay, a couple of things. One that really doesn't have anything to do with county government, and that's the EMS system in the county of Lancaster. Anyone who knows anything about reads Hemingway, The Sun Also Rises. How do you go broke? Gradually and then suddenly. And our EMS system in the county is going broke gradually, and it will fail suddenly, and that keeps me up at night. But that is not actually a county responsibility. And the second thing is our agricultural preservation system, which is a really great program. Between us and the Farmland Trust, there's over 122,400 and some odd acres of preserved farmland in Lancaster County. That is great. My concern about that is once it becomes preserved farm, there's nothing else you can do with it other than farm or let it go fallow. So if all these farms that are preserved, if we don't make sure and monitor how they're running and make sure we have systems in place to make sure they're successful, those pieces of land don't become something that gets transferred down to the next generation or continue to be productive. They just sit there. So that concerns me. I don't have an answer for it, but that's what keeps me up at night.
All right, thank you. From here on out, we'll just ask one commissioner to respond to each question, really just for the sake of time, so we can cover a number of topics. However, if there's another commissioner that has something to add or maybe a differing viewpoint, you're welcome to weigh in so we can have a robust discussion. The first topic is around the ARPA funds. To date, Lancaster County government has committed more than $40 million of its $106 million in American Rescue Plan Act funds. We have until the end of 2024 to allocate those funds. Are there any significant outcomes for the county that you would like to see as a result of this historic funding?
So I'll take that one. And I think we need to start, quite frankly, when we're talking about the ARPA funds, we need to talk about how we use the last one-time set of significant funds that we received, which was the CARES Act, because I think it sets up for how we look at using the ARPA funds. And if you look at how we used the CARES Act funds, we were one of the first counties out of the gate to have a plan and deploy those funds. It's a different time frame back then. We received those funds at the time when COVID was just really getting started, and we really didn't know much about it. Remember, state government shut everybody down. It's really affected and impacted the community in ways that we had not yet known really how it would turn out. So we deployed over 86% of that $96 million we received directly into the community. And that remaining 14%, half of that was actually county government used to pay for COVID-related, directly related expenses. So a vast majority of that money went into the community or paid for expenses that we had not anticipated. How do we put it in the community? We put it into the community to shore up our economy and to protect the health at that point in time as best we knew what was happening in the community. I say that because a lot of counties and communities around the Commonwealth, and quite frankly the country, used the CARES Act funds. They absorbed a lot of it to use for county government purposes. We didn't do that. Why is that important now when we're talking about ARPA funds? Because some of those counties and communities are playing catch up. It didn't shore up their county, their communities, like we did. And so we have an opportunity now to use this new one-time set of funds in a way that really, I think, sets us up for long-term success. And think about it. You don't want to use one-time set of funds for ongoing expenses, because when they run out, how do you then come up with the funds to continue that program on? And government is not usually good at starting something and then evaluating and changing on the fly and maybe even shutting that down. So that sets us up for this now $106 million we received. I think the majority of us on the Board of Commissioners have said, look, we really should be using these funds for the benefit of first of all, for all taxpayers of Lancaster County. These are taxpayer funds that come from the federal government, that come to us. We all pay into that, of course. And how do you do that? Well, one of the things that we're looking at doing is making sure that we are using one-time funds to modernize and update county infrastructure. Sometimes it's operational infrastructure, for instance, such as our IT, and internal customer taxpayer services in a way that shores up those systems and services. Another way is looking at how we can provide better service by putting some systems in place that didn't exist before, but then it doesn't necessarily require a lot of ongoing maintenance. So for instance, we're doing something new with respect to countywide water and sewer planning that will benefit our municipalities and those who are working in the community to develop our community in ways that the municipalities, of course, are setting forth. And another is in emergency management equipment, for instance, how we're upgrading our emergency management services and systems. Those are just a taste of some of the things we're talking about internally to county government, which benefits, of course, all of our citizens, all of our taxpayers, and are directly what county commissioners are responsible for. Another way is looking at the community. How can we use these funds to be used in a way that will be long-term, potentially transformational in terms of projects that are out in the community? And so when we're talking about that, I think the number one goal is to preserve what we love about Lancaster County, what's special about Lancaster County. And some of the examples of ways that we have done that so far is, for instance, for clean water initiatives, further farmland preservation, preserving, again, the character of Lancaster County, preserving our natural resource areas. Those are things that we have done so far and will continue to look at doing. And then also looking at community facilities. We have put some significant amount of funds into projects that directly serve the health needs of our children. Thinking about the future, talking about the future. You can't talk about the future without the future generation, our kids, and the health of those kids. Other ways are looking at our trails, our budding trail system, which is coming along quite nicely, which is also an economic driver. Water, stormwater, and sewer infrastructure. What are those projects that are more looking at the future, modernizing, increasing capacity, which we need to look at, as opposed to ongoing maintenance, which is the responsibility of our local governments. And then, yes, we have also invested in some affordable housing issues. So you have two, as far as I'm concerned, two broad perspectives there, and you can sort of bring those down or cut those down into some micro levels, and I just gave you some examples of how we're looking at that now. We are looking at potentially another tranche of community funds next year, or this year. It is next year. It's this year. But we're also continuing looking at how we can also utilize these funds, again, for county government purposes. I mentioned in my opening that we have a capital improvement plan. We're looking at how some of those projects we want to get done, because we don't have all the funds there. When you put together a capital improvement plan, you don't necessarily have all the funds identified up front. You have some funds identified. We have the opportunity, we have been taking the opportunity to potentially use some of these ARPA funds for that as well. So that's the answer to that question from my perspective.
Thanks, Commissioner. Anyone else want to add?
I'll just say one thing. Again, we have been working to look at using these funds for both the county needs that are significant and investment in the community. I will look back in time and say in both CARES and ARPA funds, where CARES Act was supposed to be for replacement of lost revenue, as was ARPA funds, Lancaster County was pretty good. We did not lose any revenue to any significant amount in 2021 or 22 in our tax base. So we're not really looking at replenishing, which a lot of other counties did have to use that money for. So I think as we go forward, as there'll be discussion among the commissioners of how much money we continue to invest in the county and for specific projects, and how much money is moved from ARPA funds into the general fund.
Thank you. All right, let's go on to our next topic, which is about the county jail. I'm going to actually ask this as a two-part question. Over the past year, county government has made significant strides in building a new county jail, including purchasing land, hiring an owner's rep, and completing a needs assessment. What are you learning from these efforts that will ultimately inform the final jail size, design, or programming?
I'm going to take this question, or attempt to take it. It's a big question. It's a big project, and we have made significant strides with the land acquisition. And, as you all know, because you've been engaged in the community for decades, this has vexed county leaders, and people have talked about it. The prison's, 1854 for the castle, and then it's been added on to the latest edition in the 80s or early 90s for the tower part, which if you were building a prison today, you wouldn't build a tower because you want, inmates to be and staff to be able to be outside. And so this has been a long-standing project. So one of the big holdups was land. Where are you going to get land? It has to be close to the courthouse. Basically, draw a 5-mile circle around the courthouse because of transportation with the courthouse. You don't want to have a lot of neighbors around a jail. So this is a perfect parcel of land, basically 3 sides river, 1 side cemetery. There's some on the other side of the river, there's some neighbors who, candidly, not all of them love this idea, but they've been very constructive about it and just want input on the design, which we're happy to include them in. And so I have to give a lot of credit to Ray for the land acquisition and managing that. I've been chairman of the prison board since 2016. That's the separate board, separate from the Board of Commissioners. It has all 3 of us and then other elected officials. But that really has oversight over the prison, but the Board of Commissioners has the purse string, so both boards are involved. But Ray really managed the land acquisition and did an outstanding job on that, because for that to go as smoothly, you would never have guessed it to go that smoothly. We're only allowed to pay market price, and the landowner was willing to pay, willing to sell for market price. We don't like to do eminent domain. And so that was not necessary for the large tract of land. It's hard to even know it's back there unless you know it's there. So this facility is going to be largely invisible to the community, and there's a chance to really have some nice green space around it and trails along the river for the community. So anyway, I think to go back to kind of the beginning, we've been talking about this for years, and it's been a lot of steps getting here. I was a prosecutor years ago, was engaged in the process then. We had big backlogs in the court system. Many of you will remember that. I was part of that argument about reforming the court system, speeding things up. So most criminal cases should never be over a year old unless it's like a homicide or something. And we had, Chester County had 1% of criminal cases over a year old. York County had like 3%. We had like 21%. So we had these big backlogs. We had a big argument with the courts, and we figured out a way to basically speed that up, because most inmates are awaiting court action in our jail. About 70% of them are awaiting some court action. The rest are serving their sentence, but it's much less. So we sped that up. We've put a lot of improvements into the system. We've done a lot to address reentry, a lot to address mental health, more to address substance use disorders. So there's a lot of work that's gone into that. The last big piece was the physical plant. Everybody knows that that has to be replaced. People have talked about it for years. We're pouring money into the old physical plant. It's not good for the staff, not good for the inmates, not good for the community. And so this project has had a lot of pieces to lead up to it, and also to put the county in a good financial place to do this. Pay down debt, increase reserves, raise our bond rating. A lot of work has gone into that. So now we're here. We have been in the needs assessment stage. You can go on our website and see the needs assessment. You can also see the presentation that was given to both the prison board and the Board of Commissioners. And that is basically crunching all the data and the numbers and figuring out, okay, basically what size facility do you think you need? And then we've put that out into the community. Community's kind of digesting it, we're digesting it, and then we're gonna have discussions about planning and what that actually looks like. And so that's kind of where we are. And there's gonna be a discussion about what size to build it. You don't wanna build too big, costs more. You don't wanna have excess space. You don't wanna build too small. At one time, the prison out there basically is for about 750. At one time, we had 1,300 inmates in there because we were not moving the court system fast enough. Now, today, it's probably around 800 or mid-800s. So a lot of work went into moving the courts faster. So the question is, what size do you build? That's what we're going to be digesting. As to what do you see as the mission for the new jail, I think the mission is to provide for the public safety needs of Lancaster County. There's going to be lots of other pieces to that, like treatment. We can do more treatment in a new facility, like other things, better reentry. But ultimately, that's what it's about, the public safety needs of Lancaster County. John has also, as an engineer, which is a good skill for us to have, has been a great part of this, has come in and has been a really good partner on this and has been leading parts of this. So I'm sure he has more or maybe different things to say than I do.
Well, to keep it short, I think, thank you, Josh. I think an interesting document that came to light was a needs assessment that was done back in the mid-1990s for a new jail. And at that time, they had a projection for 2020 of what the population of the jail would be. And that number was 1,926. Now, that was their projection of what it was going to look like in 30 years. And doing the needs assessment is really important because it gives us a snapshot of where we are, where we're going. We can't project what the judicial system is going to do, whether bail is going to be changed or something else is going to be changed. That's something that's part of the judicial system, not within the purview of the county commissioners. What we can do is take the information and use it now to decide how many beds, what type. We know we want to do more things with mental health or drugs. Can we move stuff outside the security area for second chance or something before people get in? What do we do our work release? So we'll try and take this in a very cost-benefit analysis of what we're going to do, while at the same time building a facility that meets current American detention facility standards. So natural lighting, all on one level, how many rooms, how many beds per room, how big is the medical facility going to be. So there's a lot of trade-offs and a lot of discussions. We'll include communities. We have a community meeting come February 1st for, again, presenting more information and have community input. And we'll continue to make these trade-offs of, again, we don't want to build it too big, but we really don't want to build it too small. But maybe we can make some smart trade-offs to build it what we need for now and make it so that it works well for the next 40 years. And if anyone's got a really good crystal ball of what the world's going to look like in 40 years, please tell me I'm still investing in the stock market.
Great, thanks. Any other comments?
I just think, that needs assessment, I'm glad you brought that up, back then showed 1900. And that was because, they couldn't foresee someone like Josh coming along and saying, hey, we need to get together and figure this out and make some changes. So we don't have a crystal ball. And people need to realize that as we're moving forward, we can just go based on what we have and try to make the basic decisions. And that's really what we're trying to do.
Thank you. Our next topic is on county staffing. County government recently completed a salary study, raised the minimum wage to $15 for county employees, and approved raises for most employees. Can you speak to these initiatives and how they could impact county staffing moving forward?
I guess this one got tossed to me since it was on my list. Okay. One of the things I noticed when I came in to take the job, where I signed the job of commissioner, in 2021, the county had about a 25% turnover of staff. That's really not a very sustainable model. In 2019, we had 1,847 employees. We finished up this year at 1,688 employees without any difference in what we're trying to do or provide for the county. So what started, and we unfortunately had a really excellent HR manager, Michelle Gallo, who started to work on evaluating all the non-union positions in the county. So that's about just under 1,300 positions. So she and her team started going through comparing all of our positions with our peer counties of York and Dauphin and Chester around, looking at that, and then looking at more logical groupings of what all these county employees should be in something that had been evolving over the years and been patched together. And in going through that, she started looking at it, and then I started working with her on what were important things to do, mainly looking at how do we control the turnover, because the cost of replacing somebody is much higher than the cost of keeping somebody. So it was an important thing of looking at how we're going to maintain cost and skill sets and transitions as we kept going forward. As we did that, one thing came up was seeing how we had about 300 people in the county who were making less than $15 an hour, which I felt was wrong. And Michelle Green looked at it. Now, some people were making $14.56 an hour, but other people were making $11.25 an hour or less. So we went through that and said, okay, regardless of what we're doing over here on the study, we're just going to change that one thing. And we did that in one vote and just moved it. And I appreciate the commissioners supporting that because it made a move and it helps things. But the rest of the progress was saying, okay, what is this going to cost? Is it going to benefit us? Does it bring us up to a market rate? Does it rechange people's titles and bands of salaries? And how are we going to do it moving forward? Also looking at some HR policy changes to simplify things and get through. So in doing all that, we then came into budget season and said, okay, what is this going to cost? Well, it was going to cost a chunk of money. So then it was the work of going through the budget and, again, working with the county staff and the people and the commissioners went to say, our goal is to have this be, again, that we have a balanced budget. And we got to that, working with people. We spent a lot of that time, though, also educating all the directors and row officers of what it was going to be in terms of doing this. And at the end of the day, we passed a reorganization and new salary change that in some cases had, 15, 20% changes in salaries for staff that were market rate underwriting. So we've moved the county now to where we're much more in line across the board of the county employees do it. Now, we can't move as fast as private industry. We have to do it deliberatively, and we're doing that. But the goal is to get turnover down. For 2022, I've just seen the numbers. We went from 25% turnover in 21 to 22% turnover in 22. And we went from 1626 starting number of staff to 1688 at the end of 2022. Most of that increase in staffing and reduction in turnover came in the last quarter. People started seeing this. So my hope is that in this year, I got the year right, is that in this year we will see a significant reduction in turnover and maintaining the county staff moving forward. So that was a big change, and it was an important project, and it was done without consultants or anything else. It was all done internally to the county organization.
Thank you. Any other comments, Todd? Well, I'm just going to ask one final question, and then we're going to open it up to audience Q&A, so I'm sure you've been out there brainstorming. Our final question for the commissioners is around housing and homelessness. Many people in our community care deeply about rising housing costs and the county's homeless residents. We have a number of people in this room who actually work on this topic. How are county agencies working to reduce homelessness in Lancaster, and what can we expect in the future?
Guess I'll take that, since my background is in housing, but at least part of my career, and also I've been a part of the coalition, the Homeless Coalition, since its inception. I don't know how many years ago now, but I will start off by saying this: like most issues, this is not necessarily just a government responsibility or issue. All of us in this room, all of us as individuals, those of us are housed or those of us who aren't housed, businesses, nonprofits, government, we all have a role to play in this issue. And I'm happy to say that all of us are involved in one way or another. Now, there's been more of a strain lately. It goes back to something that keeps me up at night, which is, post, whatever you want to call it, happened in the last couple of years. Things have changed. We have less people out in the community we have more jobs, less people working. We have less people actually also volunteering, quite frankly, in other places that are willing to help. That's unfortunate. And so I'm going to ask everybody to think about how they could play a role to help individuals who are wanting to be able to get to that next level and start and live their best lives. Having said that, there are a lot of things that are happening out in the community. And it's not just county agencies, quite frankly. I can tick off a lot of county agencies that are working on this and have been working on this issue, have been a part of the solution. But hopefully many of you already know that there was a significant change to happen earlier this year in the transition of the Homeless Coalition from LGH, and we thank LGH for helping lead the effort or house the effort. It went from county government to LGH, I guess now about 7 years ago. And earlier this year, the transition was made to go from LGH to the County Housing and Redevelopment Authority. That transition, quite frankly, didn't come to full fruition and completion until just a few months ago. So it had been ongoing, and largely thanks to the federal government through HUD, but it is now complete. And the nice thing about that is, again, not that there was something necessarily wrong with what was going on before, but now you have an agency that there are already existing programs and services that with respect to housing. So you have existing synergies that can be enhanced and new synergies that could come together under an agency like the County Housing Redevelopment Authority. They have a specific division now that deals with these kind of housing issues. There's also a transition, for instance, with the Reentry Coalition under that division within the Housing and Redevelopment Authority. So it's good to have an agency that specifically works with housing and economic development issues, which homelessness certainly comes under. I think part of the question is what we could see in the future. Well, under the contract that we have with the County Housing Redevelopment Authority and with the steering committee that's leading this effort for the coalition and the Housing Redevelopment Authority, I can tell you that you can expect to see increased short-term and mid-term strategic planning for this issue. I think that you'll see that in the very near future. We're in the winter. One of the things that the Homeless Coalition has and the Housing Redevelopment Authority has done very well with the help of many organizations is to put together the Code Blue emergency housing situation where it drops below a certain temperature and you have certain environmental weather-related conditions that could be very unhealthy and potentially life-threatening to those who are unhoused. Put that together rather rapidly. And there's an example of where a lot of county agencies came to help, such as our Emergency Management Agency, BHDS, and Drug and Alcohol Commission and others came to help. And other organizations like Tenfold and Food Hub and others came together rather rapidly to put this together and rather successfully. So you can see more planning for the future of that. You can also see more planning for potentially more shelter space in the future and also more affordable housing. There's been increased staffing at the level to deal with homelessness. That's a positive. And I think you could see more funding, quite frankly, coming. I know we're anticipating more funding coming from the federal government and potentially the state government to help with this issue as well. Again, perfectly situated within an agency that already puts together funding and gets funding from the county and from other levels like the federal government, has already have a plan, quite frankly. They come to the county commissioners to have a plan to use those funds. Some of those funds had already been used for homelessness. You will see greater synergies with some of this new money coming in to help in this effort. Because the goal is to actually, help people help themselves out of homelessness and stay out of that situation. And so you need partners to help with financial stability and housing stability. So I think you're going to see more of that in the future from the coalition under the umbrella of the Housing Redevelopment Authority. I think you're going to see better and more data coming in and better data analysis. That's something that has been long talked about and sought, and I think you're going to see more of that in the near future. And then shoring up our intake system and then wraparound services. These are all things on the plate, on the docket, that you're going to see, I think, more of with the re-enhanced coalition and under the umbrella of the Housing Redevelopment Authorities.
Thank you. Any other comments to add on that topic? Okay, great. Well, we're going to open it up to audience. Here we go. Audience questions. We're going to pass around one of these just so that folks watching us virtually on the live screen can hear your question. If you want to say your name and just keep the dialogue productive and respectful, those are the rules for the audience Q&A, so we're all on board. Anyone want to start with a question? See. Do you want to see? Oh, great. We have a couple people. Yeah, I'll circulate this mic, and then we have another one. Was there someone raise their hand over here? Okay, and we'll start passing it around.
No, go ahead. Go, yeah. Go.
Okay. Sorry, was there one question over here?
Yes. It's you, Gloria. Should it go?
Yeah, you can just.
Okay, my question is for Ray. Okay, I'm Gloria Burtz, and I've been with the Hourglass Foundation for quite a while. I haven't been to the meetings lately, but I'm glad I came today. So I was working shortly with an organization called Off the Streets, and it's an organization that goes around and gets homeless people and helps them get a job, pays their first month's rent and the security deposit, but they must have a job first and they must have some kind of income so they could keep this going. Their problem is that, and you probably know this, there's no housing. So if they train these people, They get them back into the workforce. They have an income. They're helping them get into an apartment. These people give them furniture and utilities, utensils for their kitchen. They have no place to put these people right now. The housing shortage is so bad. So I'm thinking, what can we do to help that situation with the housing shortage for the homeless people?
Well, it's not just for homeless people.
I know.
We have a vacancy. This has been going on for years, and it's not just here in Lancaster County. I was recently at a meeting of people from all over the country, and I said, how many of you are dealing with the same, and all the hands went up. It's a broader discussion, and quite frankly, I'm going to be quite blunt. Government's part of the problem. Government is certainly part of the problem, and particularly the federal government, and all levels of government, quite frankly, but particularly I think the federal government. When you look at the cost of building any type of house, but particularly affordable housing, now you think affordable should be less expensive to do, right? Because we have an issue for folks, right? It's not. The cost of building housing, when you add up all of the regulations at all levels, it is the most regulated industry in the United States. I dare anyone to find something else. Even utilities are not as regulated. The cost of the regulations on building housing is somewhere between, it depends on where you are in the country, between a third to a half of the cost. That's not sustainable. That needs to be dealt with. And then, quite frankly, you look at levels going down to the local level. In Pennsylvania, particularly, it's the municipalities that are in charge of housing in terms of land use, right? And so one of the things that we've been trying to do at the county level, thanks to our County Planning Commission, is to look at how we can make sure that we are providing for the uses that we need to keep our community, the healthy community that is economically. And so our County Planning Commission has been particularly working with municipalities and in a more regional sense to look at issues, not just about housing, but also economic development issues. And so it's going to take all of us. So we need to be cognizant of the fact that we need to be talking to our legislators. Hey, can you, we're not talking about eliminating regulations, but we need to reduce the regulations, start reducing the costs. So think about this. It costs over $250,000 to build like one affordable unit. And that's probably low now. But even if it was like a third of the cost that regulations add on, that's $100,000 on a unit. Not sustainable. We need to do something about that. The other thing we need to do is with the units we do have, we need to make sure that we're helping people to move on in life to be able to then afford a market rate and then home ownership. Home ownership is key to success for many people to move on and their families move on. I don't know, tenfold, was it $7,500 right now to be able to help someone purchase their first low to moderate income? What's it now? 10. I don't care, 10,000. Say $20,000. I'm not suggesting you do that, by the way. But I just told you it takes $250,000 to build a new unit. We're not going to build or fund our way out of this problem. We need all these resources, all these ideas to come together. And that's how we're going to get ourselves out of this.
Thank you. Matt?
Hi, Matt Johnson. 76% of Pennsylvania's counties are losing population, some precipitously. We're one of the oldest states, second oldest state in the union. Brain drain is the highest. The only commonality between counties that are growing, they differ as much as Philadelphia to Lancaster, Scranton area, and Erie, is immigration. Now that the county is essentially at functionally no unemployment and we still have jobs open, what can we do to make the county more hospitable for new neighbors and immigrants that are keeping our population up and filling the jobs that we need?
I'm not sure that our county is not welcoming. We do have federal policies related to immigration that restrict what someone can do, as I understand it, and I'm by no means an expert at this. But it feels like, yes, we have 10.5 million open jobs. Yes, we have people who want to work. But if you bring somebody in from overseas now, unless you can get through the very difficult visa program and check program to get them here so that they can work. It's a very slow process, and I'm sure you're more aware of it than I am. But in terms of welcoming people, well, we don't have enough housing. We have enough jobs. We have enough farms that need people working on them. We have construction people who need people working on them. We have high-tech jobs that need people working on them. So I don't think the issue is as much a county issue as it is going back to, and I'll say the nuclear power is more regulated, but that's just me. Okay. Sorry, engineering me just went that way.
Okay. Yeah, it's probably a good thing.
Yeah, we'll go with that. To say that, simplifying the process for coming in would be a better focus. I don't personally think it's a limitation in the county for wanting people to move in.
I would say, Matt, I know he's passionate on this issue, and we've talked about it before, and I think your work on this and organization demonstrates a part of the answer, which is this county is welcoming and has a long history of taking people from all over the world and welcoming those people. And you can come to the courthouse and see naturalization ceremonies where people become new citizens, and it's just an awesome thing to see. People from all over the world, sometimes very emotionally becoming new citizens. And that is a good thing, and we should all be proud about that and happy about that as American citizens. It's not a local issue, it's a national issue, in that we should all also be opposed to illegal immigration. And if you want to have a good, rational system for legal immigration, we should all be on the same page about the fact that illegal immigration is unhelpful and bad. And people should have a pathway to come here legally and in a way that's beneficial to both them and the communities that they are coming to. But that's a national issue that we're probably not going to solve here today.
Tim is helping me with the mics. I think there's a question over there.
Hi, Commissioners. I'm Christy Arnn. I'm from Community Action Partnership. Thanks so much for being here today. I'm a relatively new Hourglass member. So Commissioner D'Agostino, you kind of mentioned the character of Lancaster County, and then for Commissioner Parsons, that was what is sort of keeping you up at night, is preserving that character. So I'm just curious how you would define the current character of Lancaster County, and if you feel like there might be any elements of that character that could use some improvement that we could work on together as a community.
Well, I mean, you can look at all the top 10 lists or just talk to people, and you get a sense that we are leaders in many different areas. Whether you're talking about all the coolest lists that Lancaster City makes, or you're talking about the agriculture stuff, or you're talking about having to do with the people that we get from all over the country who come here to retire, or all the other things. But I really think it's kind of the combination of all of those, and frankly, our ability to make things work, and sort of the teamwork between the public and private sector, and also people like Matt, who know I'm a fierce partisan in that arena, are going to say this is funny coming from me. But we are able to work together in a bipartisan way a lot of times to get things done. So I think all of those things make Lancaster County very special. People are worried that we're losing, especially the agriculture. They're very concerned across all party demographics about losing farmland. And that's something we in county government have been focused on for a long time, and we've been very dedicated, this board and previous boards, to continuing that and even improving that. But also, I would say forest land preservation and the clean water issue, they're all linked together. And I know something Hourglass cares about, but we have, this board and the last board have, I think, increased our concern and investment in forest land preservation. There was some of that years ago, many years ago, that the county did, but not much lately. And working with the Conservancy, Phil Wanger, who's doing a great job on this, because people don't want to lose, as we grow, people don't want to lose that recreation space, that ability to go out to the woods. They certainly don't want to lose the farmland, both because they like seeing it, but also it's the best non-irrigated farmland in the world. And with supply chain issues, it's nice to have farms close by who can provide that food and go to Central Market. So I think that's the concern out there. And it's hard to address that, right? Because you don't want to be a dying county like some counties are in Pennsylvania. You want to be a growing county, but you want to be careful about that and manage that growth. I think we're striking the right mix, but not everybody would say that. Some people, it also depends where in the county you're living. If you're living somewhere where the traffic is really bad, you know, that's a little different than if you're living in, you know, where I grew up in Salisbury Township or down in, you know, Wakefield or something. And so it kind of depends where you're living.
Yeah, I would say, you know, there's no secret, right, that, you know, our roots are agrarian. And it's not just about preserving farms and farming and farmland, which we're doing a great job of, by the way. We're number one in the nation, it was mentioned, of farmland. And actually we have many groups working on helping farmers to continue to farm and that land that we're preserving. So that doesn't keep me up at night. But, you know, those agrarian roots have different permutations in our community. So think a higher level. We are a resilient community. We're a caring community. We're a community that's self-reliant, but does an amazing job of being collaborative. So when you look and think about Lancaster County, and I've been all over the country, in all of this Commonwealth, and one thing I learned is that these things that I've just mentioned are not to be taken for granted. And I'm not going to name any names. I used to name names, which I've learned not to do in terms of other counties who could do a better job. It made the New York Times one time, so I got to be careful nowadays. But, you know, those are the things that are special about Lancaster County. You know, Josh mentioned some organizations. You look around other counties, not just in Pennsylvania, other in the country, you're not going to see, A, some of those organizations, B, that they're actually working with each other instead of competing. You know, I mentioned the Housing Redevelopment Authority. Think about what they do, and they are doing a tremendously good job of the things I mentioned. Lancaster Farmland Trust, the Conservancy, the list can tenfold. The list can go on. I don't want to leave anybody out, but other communities don't have it. We have a spirit here, quite frankly, that you're not going to find anywhere else. And that is to be something we ought to look at preserving. And we don't even have to think about it, quite frankly. We just do it. And that's what's really exciting about Lancaster County.
Thank you. We have a question here in the middle of the room.
Hi, Ed Kaminsky from Landis Communities. My question is about the existing prison. What's the timeline for redeveloping that site? Looks like a great opportunity. And what are your thoughts for the redevelopment?
Development of the existing site. There really can't be. I mean, we have to have the new prison underway, and then the city has to rezone it because it's only zoned right now for a prison. And so, you know, our goal is to sell that property. I think I mentioned this last year, that our goal should be as soon as the new prison is open, or a correctional facility, I got to change the lingo here, I guess we're using that, and the last people and things are moved out, we should be able to turn the keys over to someone else. But it's a community discussion decision. We want to sell it to someone who will make a great use of that property. But as I mentioned before, it's a local land use issue.
Maybe it's a good topic for a white paper from the Hourglass,
There
because
you go. Work with the city.
it's not too often you get a whole city block to redevelop. So, and it has a cool castle on it. Whether somebody can save it, I don't know. But
I'd love to see it go for a haunted mansion kind of thing, you know? And the timing great, because the city is working on a comp plan, and I've talked to the mayor about this. This is a really good time to have that conversation. Do it now so that we can be able to turn the keys over to someone else.
Questions for the commissioners? Any last?
Hi, I'm Alice Yoder with Lancaster General. I I feel like I've been involved with a lot of the questions and issues that you have been discussing. And the one thing I don't know why it just dawned on me now, but can you talk a little bit about how you feel the county's role is with climate change? What the county's role should be in that?
I mean, again, you have to understand what the structure of the county is, and of the 41 departments, from judicial to the coroner to parks to different things, children and youth and Office of Aging and all those other things, it doesn't really have that sort of environmental footprint. We do get involved when you look at farmland preservation. Obviously, that has an impact on keeping greenery going, but also having other effects. As much as I'd like to see us put maybe some more solar cells up on the roof, I don't see the county having the responsibilities, because of the facilities we own, having that much to do with climate change. I mean, the new prison will be environmentally up to date in terms of air conditioning and heating and cooling, and the discussions about is it heat pumps and everything else. So with a new facility, we'll take care of that to be at the current rate. I think, things like the city that has more involvement, and cities and municipalities that have involvement with sewer and power use and other things, have a bigger statement on it. Also, they have a bigger footprint. The county doesn't really have a footprint of lots of concrete. We have, 1, 2, 3, 4 buildings, one in Manhattan, downtown, something. That's about it. We have parkland that we maintain, and we also, as Commissioner Parsons says, we've invested with the Lancaster Conservancy to help preserve more natural forest, and want to continue that. But I guess I don't see a focal point for the county on climate change, per se, other than being good stewards of what we're doing to, renovations at the courthouse, again, to have more energy efficiency on what we're doing.
Any other comments on that? So we can probably take one last question. I know, John, you had a question.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on the housing question. John Hirsch. Ray, you mentioned the regulations and how it costs $250,000 to construct a affordable housing unit. Could you just be a little more specific about which regulations? Is it, zoning? Is it prevailing wage? To what extent is that local versus federal, state? No, there's many. Yeah, I just wanted a little more specifics into what those are.
Well, if we're talking about specifically, and by the way, all housing is overregulated and it costs. But if you're talking about affordable housing, the requirements that are to build something like that are just over the top. I mean, there's so many more regulations, and so you have a building code, right? Well, which a lot of folks, it's supposed to be for safety and the community, the people who are going to live there. Well, you would need a whole other manual to add on to that to build an affordable housing. It's crazy. If it's good enough for everybody else in the community, why is it not good enough to build something like that for? A lot of people used to be concerned about, well, we don't want to be able to distinguish an affordable unit from and I agree with that. But to go the other direction, that you put so many more onerous requirements on that nobody else has to live with, is really overtaxing and just over onerous.
I think we can take one last question. The mic's over there, and then we'll come back to the commissioners.
Jerry Eckerd, emeritus from Millersville University. Thank you all for your service and the job. John, I'm particularly interested in, you somewhat volunteered for the job. Okay? And how are you feeling? I mean, are you, do you think you're succeeding, frustrated, too slow, probably not too fast? Are there agenda items you'd like to get to? And I realize we have about a minute and a half left.
In a minute and a half. It's been very interesting. Again, I've spent a lot of time meeting all the people in the county government, met some amazing people there. Highest praise I would have is there are a lot of these people I would hire in private industry. So I think we're very lucky to have some of the staff we have who are dedicated for doing the work we've done. Again, doesn't being in international mining development and mining equipment around the world doesn't really tie in here that well. But there does tie into personnel and other things. I'll admit that it became a little more political than maybe I was prepared for, but that's part of what it came in on. It doesn't, we work together, as Josh said. Most things we get along with, some things we don't. And when we don't, we try and work it out within the bounds of Sunshine's Law or in the public, and whatever the outcome is, then we move along and I keep going. So I'd say it's been a good experience. I'm glad I'm not running for office. They are. I am looking forward to getting a few more things accomplished in the new year, hoping to see that the salary plan does what we hoped it would, but adjusting fire if it doesn't. Trying to see how we can make things better and more functional in the county government so it provides the goods and mainly services that it does a little bit better. Trying to make sure that when we can streamline the way we do things to make it better, the county doesn't have the responsibility for roads and power and sewer and everything else. So it's less what is our strategic goal of the county as opposed to continuing to do a good job in the county and use the money that comes through the county efficiently. We continue to work on budgets every year, but we're fortunate that the money comes in well, but it's not like running a business. This is more like having 40 different businesses, and among those 40s, you've got the other elected officials, from the judges to the row officers, who can comfortably ignore anything the county commissioner says. And I'm correct on that?
I'm not sure about the comfortably part.
So we work with that, and it's a very interesting thing. I'm enjoying it. It's a good experience. I hope I've gained something, and I hope as I leave that somebody will say, well, he didn't do too bad. And I hope that the county of Lancaster continues to do well and that we make some more progress.
Thank you. Well, we're coming to the end of our time. I did want to check in with the commissioners to see if there was anything, final comments, or maybe a topic that didn't come up today that you want to address before we adjourn today.
I appreciate you having us, as always, and appreciate the great questions.
Well, thank you so much to the commissioners. Yes, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate you all joining us today and your service to the community. A video recording of today's panel will be made available on our website and YouTube channel sometime next week, so please share that with people in the community who would benefit from learning a little bit more about county government and our county commissioners. Our next First Friday Forum will be February 3rd. I'll be back here at the Ware Center with Lancaster City Mayor Deneen Sirachi and Lancaster City's new police chief, Richard Mendez. To receive invitations to all of our First Friday Forum events, you can become an Hourglass member. You can do that on our website at hourglasslancaster.org. So I hope to see you then, and until then, have a great weekend and enjoy January.